I'm writing this from my apartment where I've been fielding calls from family members for the past week, all trying to make sense of what happened at my sister's wedding that turned into the most dramatic family event any of us have ever experienced. My name is Kendall, I'm 28 years old, and my older sister Victoria's wedding invitation included one unusual rule that ended up unraveling her fiance's entire double life. Victoria is 33 and had been dating her fiance Blake for 2 years before he proposed. She met him through a dating app and they seemed genuinely happy together from what I could see. Blake was a regional sales manager who traveled frequently for work, which explained why we didn't see him at every family gathering. When he was around, he was charming and attentive to Victoria, and my parents seemed to approve of him. The engagement was sudden but not alarming. Blake proposed during a romantic weekend getaway and Victoria called me immediately after saying yes, gushing about how perfect everything had been. She was 33 and had been worried about whether she'd ever find the right person, so finding Blake felt like a relief and a blessing. They set a wedding date for 8 months later, giving them time to plan but not dragging things out too long. When the wedding invitations arrived 3 months before the ceremony, I noticed something unusual in the details section. Along with the typical information about dress code and RSVP instructions, there was a specific rule printed in bold text. To ensure an intimate celebration, we kindly request that all guests attend solo unless a +1 has been specifically assigned on your invitation. We appreciate your understanding. I thought it was a bit odd since usually couples allow +1s for people in serious relationships, but I figured Victoria and Blake wanted to keep their guest list small and controlled. When I called Victoria to RSVP, I mentioned the rule and asked if it was a budget thing or a venue capacity issue. Victoria laughed and said it was actually Blake's idea. She explained that Blake had always been private about his life and didn't like the chaos of big weddings where people bring random dates who don't know anyone. He wanted their wedding to be only close friends and family, people who genuinely cared about them as a couple. Victoria had agreed because she also preferred a more intimate celebration over a huge impersonal event. I accepted the explanation and didn't think much more about it. I was going solo anyway since I'd recently broken up with my boyfriend, so the rule didn't affect me personally. Over the next few months, I helped Victoria with wedding planning, going to dress fittings and helping her decide on flowers and decorations. Blake was often traveling for work, so he wasn't as involved in the day-to-day planning, but Victoria said he trusted her taste and was excited about the wedding. About a month before the wedding, I was having lunch with our cousin Melissa, who'd also received an invitation. Melissa mentioned that she'd found the solo guest rule strange because she'd been dating her boyfriend Adam for over a year and felt weird about not being able to bring him. She said she'd called Victoria to ask for an exception, but Victoria had been firm about the rule, saying Blake really wanted to keep the guest list restricted to people they both knew well. Melissa said something else that caught my attention. She mentioned she'd tried to find Blake on social media to friend him since they were about to be family, but his accounts were all private or non-existent. She'd found a LinkedIn profile that seemed to be him, but it had minimal information and no photo. She thought it was weird for someone in sales to have such a low social media presence, but figured maybe he was just really private. That conversation stuck with me. I went home and tried to search for Blake online myself. Melissa was right. He was basically a ghost on social media. I found what might have been his LinkedIn, but it was sparse and didn't include much detail about his work history. His Facebook seemed to not exist, or if it did, it was under a different name. For someone who supposedly worked in sales and traveled constantly for client meetings, he had remarkably little professional online presence. I told myself I was being paranoid and looking for problems where none existed. Some people just value their privacy and don't maintain active social media accounts. Blake had always been friendly and appropriate with our family. Victoria was clearly happy with him. The wedding was a month away and everything was planned. I decided to let it go and stop digging into Blake's online presence or lack thereof. The week before the wedding, Victoria was stressed but excited. She'd taken the week off work to handle last-minute details.
Click below to listen to full story.